All right, today is Wednesday, October 18th, 2023. So my fingertips are pretty sore and raw from sanding yesterday, which I'm still not done yet. So what I think I'm going to do is go ahead and mostly finish the mock-up on the fuel line here. So I'm going to use aluminum tubing. Here's this 3/8. This is aluminum fuel line. I know some guys don't like aluminum fuel line, but I don't know what to tell you. I've been using it since the 90s. So I'm going to use that, and I've got these aluminum two-piece clamps from All-Star Performance, and that's the part number right there. There's a lot of companies that make a clamp just like this. What I like about these is not the traditional style where it kind of holds the line smashed up against the frame. These are kind of like a standoff style, so they hold it up off the frame just a little bit, you know what I mean. Anyway, I think they're pretty trick. But anyway, they have a stainless steel countersink Allen screw in them. These are actually 1032s. Now I won't use the nuts. What I will end up doing is drilling and tapping the frame to 1032, and these will bolt directly to the frame. So I could not tell you how many old, especially 55s and stuff, that I have done that to. 156, 157, but 257s actually. So I am going to run it on the inside top edge of the frame rail here. You know, some of the cars, they had fuel line on the inside, and some of them had fuel line on the outside. And obviously if it's outside the frame rail, it's away from exhaust heat, but running the aluminum fuel line, it's a little bit better for that, but it'll be just fine because I've never had an issue doing that. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to run it right across the frame, right up above the transmission crossmember brackets that I made, because the crossmember doesn't go all the way to the edge of the frame, and then right across the top of these three body mounts right here, and then it'll kick out and back, and I'll leave it a little long so once the body's on and the gas tank's in, I can cut and put the fitting and everything on the end of it to hook to the sending unit. So I will put a slight flare, just a slight single flare on this end, because the fuel hose will go on that with a worm clamp, because you have to have, you can't just run a hard line directly from your chassis that's mounted to it directly to your engine, because your engine moves inside your frame. It shakes around and also torques. So you have to have a flex line at the front. So that's exactly what we're going to do there. It'll just be a piece of fuel line going to it, just like most of the GM stuff in the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s, and the 80s had. So, and you know, probably newer than that as well. But so I'm going to go ahead and get started on that. One thing I have decided I think I'm going to do is, there's also brake line that has to be run to the back of the car, and the one thing that I don't like on Tri-5s, and I usually change it especially when the chassis is out from under the car, is the rear brake line, the metal brake line, runs back here and turns into a flex line that goes to the rear axle. It's always on the right hand side of the car, and the master cylinder is on the firewall on the driver's side of the car. So you have to basically run a line down through there, two of them actually, because one goes over there to the front brake if you run a dual reservoir master cylinder. So I'm going to simplify it and just have a brake line and run it down this spot, and it'll also be in the exact same spot on this side top of the frame. So one thing to do to change that, you have to take the bracket off of the rear axle, which I have to take all that stuff off anyway, because I got to move all the perches and everything back to stock location. Some of the bump stop things I made are custom, so I have to cut pretty much everything off of the chassis and smooth it and then re-weld. So I need to drill these two spot welds right here on, this is the brake line bracket, and I'm going to turn that upside down and put it right here in the exact same spot and plug weld it on. So I'm basically just going to move the brake line over here. I'm not sure when GM started running the brake line down this side of the frame in their cars, but I know for sure G-Body's had it, so that's what I'm going to do. And basically it keeps you from having two lines bunched up together on one side. I'm going to put one on one side and one on the other. But anyway, I'm going to get started. All right, guys, I'm going to show you how I get the fuel line semi kind of straight to put it across the frame. Usually if you try unrolling that by hand, you'll end up with a whole bunch of this. So if you kind of roll it out, you're going to get a decent little, just a kind of a broad curve. And then once you start mounting it on the chassis, as you put each clamp on, it kind of straightens itself out. It won't be perfectly straight, but it'll look like it's straight because the frame, you know, has a couple of wonkies in it anyway. But and just how I do it, you can do it however you want. All right, I got everything out here I think I need so far. So I got my drill and tap set, 1032. I got my tap sockets. If you don't have a set of these and you're gonna do a bunch of drilling and tapping on your chassis, these are awesome. They're not that expensive. This is actually a socket set that the taps, that's what these are for. Your taps fit down in there. They have the square socket part in there that these fit into. The littler ones are 1/4 inch drive, the rest of them are 3/8. I got a inexpensive spring punch here. So what I did was I took half of the brake line clamp, because it is a two-piece. This is the lower. The upper one has a countersink in it for the screw. And what I did was I set it up here, trying to figure it out for placement the way I liked it. So I used a fine tip Sharpie and I went in there and drew a circle. And I'm kind of getting my basic shape, and this is where I'm starting, is up here. I'm going to leave this long up here, and I'm going to wait until I get the rest of it mounted down the side, and then kind of tweak on this a little bit more. This aluminum you can bend by hand really easy without kinking it. It just goes slow with it. But anyway, it's going to run right along the top of the frame up in here, and then it'll slowly kick down onto the side of it down there. But I'm going to start right here. It's always good to use a really dull drill bit so it can take you longer and heat up your primer. That was a joke, by the way. So I want to go ahead and get this one on here and mount it, and then that way it kind of locks this area of the part down and I can continue on. I don't know what size little drill bit that is that I started with, maybe 1/8 inch or something like that, I don't even know. Just a pilot hole's all I did. So then I'll move into the drill bit that is actually for the 1032 tap. Now when you're tapping metals, or anything really, it's a good idea to use a lubricant. I have primer on this and I don't want to contaminate the primer with any kind of lubricants or anything like that, especially WD-40, you know, whatever. So I am going to do this dry, so it's going to take me a little bit of time because doing it dry, you run the risk of breaking your tap off in there. So I basically just do it by feel. And I can kind of feel when it wants to stop. So what I'll do is I'll back it off and turn it just a little bit and then go at it again. And I usually have to do that multiple times. So these drill bits or tap sets, the ones I have are just cheap. They're not, you know, really high end. The frame rail it's not super thick, but this tap has been used a bunch. So, you know, it's pretty used up at this point. I need a new one, really. And if you've ever broke a tap off in something, it's not fun. So if you went in there and manhandled it, it'd probably just snap it right off there. These cheap ones anyway. These are like $5 I think at Lowe's, or $6 or something. So I'm sure not going to put an impact driver on here and try to, you know, use a little 1/4 inch impact or anything, because I don't want to snap my tap off in there. Because then I'll have to jump in the truck, drive to the store, buy another one, snap it off, jump in the truck, go to the store, buy another one. Well, you get the idea. All right, so that'll go like that. And I did not get the T-handle Allen to tighten this down. That'll give you the idea of what it looks like on there. These are very, very trick looking in my opinion. I like this kind of little detail stuff. When the hood's open, you're going to see a few of these. So I don't think they're very expensive, and I like how they keep it up off of the chassis. You have space under there. So, you know, after you paint a chassis, if you've done a really nice paint job and you go to put your lines on there. All right guys, so I've got the fuel line routed. I've got it on the top edge of the frame, so it's actually just above the curve of the frame here. Anyway, it's what I'm doing is I'm doing this to where in the event that the fuel line ever needs to be replaced, it could be done with the body on the frame. It'd be, you know, it's not going to be a walk in the park by any means, but you would be able to feed an aluminum fuel line. It's so soft it bends easy. You could feed it up through there in between the body mount cushion and stuff, and run it down through there. But every placement of my clamps will be able to be accessed with the body on the frame. If you mounted these to the top of the frame and you had an incident with your fuel line, you'd have to remove the body to get to the Allen head bolts, you know what I mean, to get to it. So the way I did it, all of them are accessible to, you know, to work on them later. So you can do them however you want. This is just the way I do it. I have done many Tri-5 Chevys this exact way, so never had a problem. So I stuck his cross member on here. I didn't video. This got painted. This is single stage urethane, black. Anyway, I knew I had clearance in between, but I wanted to make sure I had plenty, and I do. There's plenty of clearance there. The chassis will be low gloss black, but I went ahead and painted the cross member high gloss black. I think it looks really nice. I didn't do any body work to that. I just primered it and then scuffed it and painted it, and it looks pretty good. And if you remember, I had to weld up all the holes, and I had to fix it where it was all bent out and stuff, but it turned out really, really sharp. I'm pretty happy with it. But anyway, it'll run across here, across the top edge of the frame up here, and then up, and then kick out. And I'm just going to leave it long so I can put the fittings and stuff on it later to hook to the sending unit. Now, one thing I do want you to know, if you're going to try to do this with aluminum fuel line, you got to remember aluminum is soft, so don't smash this up into that body mount like that and have it laying right on it. When you get them clamps on there, try to elevate it or get it off of it a little bit. That way over time that steel doesn't, you know, work into that aluminum and puncture it. So don't just smash it down on there, you know, have it bolted down on clamps smashed into that little deal right there. It's not a good idea. So anyway, you can always go in and you could notch, you know, take a cutoff wheel and you could take, you know, probably an 1/8 inch or a little bit more off of this. Just cut this top edge off back a little bit, and this would probably go down there a little bit lower if you needed to. But this style of clamp, you can see how the hole's offset, so it, when you mount it like that, you get that hole as high as you can before the curve of the frame on the top, and it'll elevate that pretty good off there. So that's how I'm going to do it, like it or not. I might also add, when you're doing this, like if you're doing it for mock-up first before paint, like in my case, I don't want to put any lubricants or anything on any of this stuff because I don't want to contaminate my primer, because I still got to paint it, you know what I mean? But these are a grade 2 stainless steel Allen screw or bolt, so it doesn't take much torquing down, like tightening it down, to stretch them threads, and that's what makes it gall. So you always use anti-seize on any stainless hardware, whether it be grade 2 or not. But anyway, if you're mocking it up and you don't want to use anti-seize, like I didn't want to put anti-seize on here because it would have made a mess, I didn't torque these down real tight. They're still a little bit loose. So anyway, just wanted to get that out there. I wanted to also add, I'd done the same setup on my wife's 4-door recently on my channel. There is a video of it, and somebody, I don't remember who it was saying that these needed to be insulated so this wouldn't vibrate. When did GM start putting insulated clamps on is what I want to know. They weren't insulated on the Tri-5s. They weren't insulated on G-bodies either, from 78 to 88. I know that for a fact. So I'm pretty sure they're not insulated on my square body, and it's an 87. So all right, so I got the fuel line mocked up, and I got it coiled up there, and that'll stay that way. And well, I'm going to pull it back off so I can paint the frame, obviously, but that'll go back on. I'll leave it just like that, and then put the body on, and then climb under the car, and then finish getting that end completed with the fitting on it and attach it to the tank. So I turned my attention to the brake lines. So these are 3/16 steel brake lines. These are just part store straights. This one actually come off of his car, and yeah, I mean, it's pretty it's not straight, we'll say that. I tried straightening it out the best I could, and it's pretty wonky, but again, you know, he's not putting mirrors under the car, and it'll work just fine. So I need to remove that brake line bracket right there and turn it upside down and transfer it to here in the exact location and weld it on. And then I'm going to stick the rubber brake hose up in there, clamp it on, and then screw that to it, and then start clamping it on there. Now this is a pretty long piece, and it has a union here, so most likely going to remove this piece and leave this part. And he has a pre-bent brake line set for the front, but it goes across the cradle to the other side. So I'm going to remodify it to where it will come back and meet this one. I probably have to cut it and double flare it. So that's the plan. Anyway, I got ready to. I was going to go ahead and try to find my placement for these 3/16 brake line clamps. Is the same kind of clamp as the fuel line ones. They're just smaller. This is the Summit ones. The ones I used on the fuel line are All-Star. So these were a little bit cheaper per pack than the All-Star, so I tried to save him money, and this is the ones I got. The All-Star for the fuel line came with a standard screw or bolt. These are metric, and I don't have any metric taps, so that's wonderful. So trying to save, I got 3 packs, so trying to save $3. Yeah, I think they were about $1 a pack cheaper. I don't really remember. I'm going to have to end up going to the store in the morning. I'm going to have to take a screw with me. I'm going to have to dig in the metric bin and find a nut, you know, at the store that fits this, and then I'm going to have to buy a tap. So saving $3 ended up costing a little bit more. I mean, the taps are only like $5 or $7 or something like that. I don't even know, but it's just frustrating, man. I don't have any metric taps. I think I got one, but it's way too big for that. So the other thing I could do is possibly change these out to like either a 632 or an 832. So actually I might go ahead and just take that piece of the clamp there, because these are countersunk. So I think that's what I'll do, because it might be cheaper just to buy metric screws than it would be to buy a tap. So I guess I've got two avenues to go through, so that's what I'll do. But anyway, it's getting close to the end of the day, so I'm going to go ahead and put up shop, get the fuel line removed from the frame, and then get this thing pushed back over, get the plastic put back on it. So I'm hopefully going to have this thing finished, scuffed up tomorrow. I'm just Scotch-Brighting this back here, this whole back of the chassis. And then most likely we'll paint it Friday. That's the plan, unless it rains or something, but hopefully be painting it Friday. Thanks for watching.